So I actually don't know where we are. We're somewhere about an hour from Zurich, up in the Alps, I suppose, at a ski resort. Everything is pronounced Uffenheisen, and so I'm not sure where we are, but absolutely stunning here. I don't know if you can see it, a little hay barn behind me. There's hay barns everywhere here in Switzerland, and absolutely stunning. So Kimmy and I came up for a day of skiing, which was quite an adventure because we drove ourselves. The hotel gave us a really nice BMW X5, and of course, thank goodness for GPS, because that's how we found the ski resort. And so here's what I want to talk about today. I want to talk about distinctions. So distinctions are, well, the best way to describe them is to give you some examples. So there's a boat in Hawaii called the Hokalua. And the Hokalua is a boat that is manned by local Hawaiians. A lot of them have originally from the Fiji Islands, that have mastered the art of navigating the oceans without GPS and without a sextant, without any equipment at all. And the ancients say that's how the sailors from Fiji found Hawaii to begin with, is because they'd mastered this art of navigating the seas, or at least perhaps how they got back to it the second time. I don't know how they got there the first time. And so, you know, I was reading a documentary on the Hokalua and the people that are, right now, it is sailing around the world with a crew from Hawaii, and they are sailing around the world without instruments. And you might wonder, if you're a sailor, if you've ever done any sailing or navigating on the ocean, how do you get from point A to point B? It's kind of like navigating outer space without any instruments, without GPS. And the way they do it is with distinctions. So if you and I are out on the water, you know, the distinction we might have for navigation is, well, you know, we need to be able to see where we're going. That's the only distinction we have. So we sail towards a point, or we motor the boat towards a point, or we paddle towards a point. That might be the only distinction we have for navigating in the ocean. But these Hawaiians from Fiji descent, I think, you know, they have all kinds of distinctions for navigating on the ocean. For example, the subtlety of the winds to them is like GPS. You know how, like, when you're following GPS in your car, that you know, it says, you know, 3 miles ahead, turn left, or a slight left, or a hard left, or, you know, those kinds of instructions. These kind of people have the distinction for the wind as though a GPS was talking to them. The subtlety of the winds, the direction of the wind, the pace of the wind, how the wind is intermittent or it's blowing steady, how it's changing directions. They have all these distinctions for the wind. And then they have all these distinctions for the surf. You know, how big is the surge? How big are the waves? And, you know, how is the wind affecting the waves? They have all of this information in their mind as they're sailing. Then they have currents, so they actually pay attention to the currents in the ocean. And, you know, if you look at the ocean from a map, you know, overhead, you can see these ocean currents, and they're very influential in where a boat or anything floating on the ocean is going to go. So I started thinking about distinctions because you know, on our way here from the airport, we were picked up by, you know, I guess it was a taxi driver, Uber or something, and he's taking us to the hotel, and it started snowing what I know as corn snow. Now, Kimmy doesn't have the distinction corn snow because she didn't grow up skiing, so she asked the driver, so is it hailing? And the driver said, well, not really, but sort of, which is kind of his way of describing the distinction corn snow. Corn snow is kind of a hard little pellets kind of snow, and, you know, it takes certain atmospheric conditions for corn snow to happen. And so it reminded me of something I learned, you know, many, many years ago about distinctions, which is this, that we as, you know, landlubbers, maybe not skiers, we might have one distinction for snow. Like Kimmy might have one distinction for snow, which is, you know, white frozen stuff that's sort of floating down. Eskimos, I'm told, have 17 different distinctions for snow. proficient snow skiers probably have at least a half a dozen, if not more. And, you know, I was paying attention as we're skiing today that, you know, to navigate your way down a hill with any kind of speed, you have to have the distinction, certain kind of moguls. So you turn your ski. So you turn these things, you know, I'm on a flat slope right here, so there's no moguls, but you know, what you're looking for as you're skiing is you're looking for these bumps in the hill, and a certain kind of bump has a certain kind of contour to it. And that's a distinction that skiers have for how do you navigate your way down a hill with speed. You're looking for these certain kind of bumps that have a certain curve to it, a certain height, a certain diameter that, you know, depending on how fast you're going and what kind of skis you have. So skiers have all these distinctions, not only for the kind of snow they're skiing on, but the terrain itself, just like a Hokulua has all these distinctions for the wind and the water and the currents, and all of it combined creates this art of navigation. So the question that I have for you today is, what are you pursuing mastery of? And how many distinctions do you have for that profession? So, for example, you know, most of us that listen to these are in network marketing or some kind of sales. So, you know, when somebody tells you no, when somebody tells me no, I've never counted them, but I'll bet I got, you know, 10, 15 different distinctions for no's. You know, no, I'm not interested. You know, one distinction is no that's emphatic. One distinction is no, but the body language doesn't say no. One distinction is no, but there's some doubt in the no. One distinction is no, and they're angry that I even asked, you know. You follow me on this? Like, if you're a professional salesperson, you might have 20 different distinctions for no. And of course, based on those distinctions, you know how to dance with that particular no. Based on the distinctions you have for moguls or terrain in skiing, you know how to navigate your way down the hill with speed. Based on the distinctions you have for sailing without instruments, you know how to get from point A to point B. So my question for you is, what are you pursuing mastery of, and how many distinctions do you have? Do you just have one distinction, like snow, or one distinction, you know, this hill that we're skiing on, and I don't really know how terrain fits into it, or what kind of terrain I'm looking for, or you know, what kind of terrain works if you're going slow, but other kind of terrain you need if you're going fast to get down the hill safely. So think about that. Think about what you're pursuing mastery in, and write down the distinctions. And here's how you go from amateur to master of your trade. The more distinctions you have, the more mastery you have. So write those down and go after them. And you know, one of the ways you can learn more of them is get coached. Interview people that have more mastery than you. And, you know, give them a particular subject, like, you know, how do I get down this hill right here? How do I get down there? You know, if I want to go off terrain here, I want to go like off this trail and go down into those trees, well, you know, I would need a bunch of different distinctions. How do I do that? How do I get through that junky snow? It's actually pretty powdery, but, you know, it's deep. How do I get through that snow? And what do I do when I get to the trees? Well, the way I would learn that is I would interview and study under a tree skier, somebody that, you know, knows how to navigate all that. And what I would listen for is their distinctions, like how they saw terrain and how they saw the trees. And, you know, one of the things I know about tree skiers is they stay away from the well of the tree. And that's that circle around the base of the tree where the snow is kind of goes like this, and it, you know, creates this well around the tree where the branches have kept the snow from piling up right next to the trunk. That's a distinction of tree skiers. And why is that important? Because you don't want to get near the well of the tree, or you fall in it. You fall in it, you can't get out if it's deep snow. So that's just one distinction of a tree skier. And I'm not a tree skier, but that's about as much as I know about it. So go after mastery and find the people that know a lot more than you do and ask them for their distinctions. They may not know it by that word, But ask them, how do they navigate? You know, when they hear no, how many different ways does somebody tell them no? When they see somebody that might be a prospect, somebody that might be a good candidate for the business, you know, what are some of the distinctions they look for? One of the things Kimmy and I look for in a distinction for somebody for our business is we look for happy. We look for energy. It's kind of like the Starbucks rule for hiring. You don't train happy, you hire happy people. And so when we're talking to somebody about joining us in business, we only talk to people that are happy. So if they're happy in their job now, if they got great energy, boy, we're interested in talking to them. But if they don't have great energy, we're not interested in talking to them because they're not going to do well in our business. That's a distinction that we know. If you're not a people person, if you're not happy, you're not going to make it in the people business, right? So write those distinctions down. Make a list. Go for 20. Go for mastery. Get a coach. You know what? I'll give you a ride down the hill. How about that? It's like really easy going, so I can do that. That's how we'll finish up our live. This is like a cat track. One of the things good skiers hate about cat tracks is it's a really good place to catch an edge. That's another distinction of skiing. And fall flat on your face on a really easy slope. So you don't want to do that. Here's one of these beautiful hay barns. Isn't that gorgeous? This is like meringue. The snow here is like meringue. It's gonna get windy. That's the village down below. That's a tree skier, took off down there.